Hello, in this video, we show you how you can create a simple web application with Flask and Python. In this web page, the user can enter a text and the code simply echoes it. We start by creating a Python virtual environment. This can be done using this command. We now activate the virtual environment to install the Flask package in it. This can be done using this command. We now install the Flask package using the pip command. This takes a few seconds. Now let's create an empty Python file within the current directory. We then import the Flask module from the Flask library. After that, we create a Flask object as our main application. You can use any arbitrary name for it. Next, we need to create a function and connect it to the URL of our web application. This can be done by the root decorator in Flask. Using this command, whenever we browse to the URL of our application, the following function is called automatically. We named this function as index, which prints a simple text whenever it is called. Using this code, whenever we visit our web page, this simple text is shown. Now, we write a command to run our application whenever this Python code is executed. We now run the application in the debug mode so that, if it throws any error, we can debug it easier. So, whenever we run this code, it runs the Flask application automatically, and it connects it to our index function. Now, let's run the code. By running the code, a default URL is created for us, and we can visit our web page by clicking on this URL. Let's click on it and see the result in our browser. As you can see, our message is shown in the web page. Now, let's create a folder called templates in the current directory and put a simple HTML file in it. Open the HTML file and define a body for it. To design our web page, we put a label, an edit box, and a submit button within the body of this HTML file. Let's put the label or title first. We now design our form and define a URL and a post method for it. This way, the data of this form can be posted to our Python code when we submit the data in our form. We now put our edit box so that the user can input a text through it. To do so, you need to specify a type, an ID, and a name for it. You can set the type to a text so that it becomes a text box. But you can use arbitrary values for the ID and name. We will use the name of this text box later to access its data in our Python code. Note that you must use unique name for each component in your HTML file. Now, we define our submit button. The user can use this button to submit its input text. Okay, now let's open our HTML file in our browser to see how it looks like. Now, we connect this HTML file to our index function. To do so, we first import a module called renderTemplate. We then use this module to render our created HTML file within our index function. In other words, whenever we visit our web page, the index function is called, which in turn displays our HTML file. The output of the index function will be the output of the render template. Now, let's run our code and see its result. As you can see, when we visit our web page, our created HTML file is displayed. Now, let's modify our code to get the data of our text box when the user hits the submit button. To do so, we first define a post and a get method for our Flask decorator. Now, we import another module called request. Using this module, we can communicate with the forms in our web page. We then add two if statements within our index function. First, we check the method of the input request. If it is a post method, then we get the value of our text box through it. We then return it to the web page, just to echo the user's input. So, whatever the user submits is shown in the output. To access the data of the text box, you should use the exact name of the text box that you defined in the HTML file. Now, if the method of the input request is something else, we simply display our HTML file. For example, for the first time that you visit the web page, you just see the HTML file that you have created. Let's polish our code a little bit and run it again to see its action. Let's input a text and hit the submit button. As you can see, the input text is displayed again, which is expected. This was a very simple tutorial on how to use the Flask library in Python to create a simple web page.